there he goes. The Minister of Defense was just up for a conference here in the Enchanted Kingdom of Hermione. I'm Zip Gun, the Lord Chamberlain, and your host, here in the Turret of Pleasure, the highest point of the Enchanted Kingdom. It's over by Baker Creek there, which is near Souk, BC, near Victoria, near Vancouver, you know. Today, well, we're going to do another version, episode, whatever, of What Were They Thinking? What were they thinking? Today we're going to concentrate on a favorite subject of mine. Don Van Vliet, otherwise known as Captain Beefheart. Now, Captain Beefheart had been around. We're going to discuss 3 records today from the mid-70s. Beefheart had started in 65, had a good regional hit with Diddy Wah Diddy, which was pretty straight. A lot of people said it sounded like the Rolling Stones, kind of bluesy. And then he went and did Safe as Milk, which was largely directed by Ry Cooder, who was in his band briefly at this time. And it's a pretty good, straight-ish anyways, blues rock record, fairly advanced for 1966, I would guess. But then Beefheart started getting weird. I think he started doing a lot of LSD. And his music started getting stranger. Ry Cooder, who's a much more pragmatic fellow than the good Captain, ultimately tired of his antics and quit the band. And a new band kind of coalesced around Vliet and Alex St. Clair, one of the original guitar players, and they did the album Strictly Personal for Bob Krasnow. But unfortunately, that record was pretty interesting. But when they were off on tour, the word is, the legend has it, that Bob discovered flanging. And he flanged most of the record while they were off on tour, unbeknownst to them. And when they came back, they didn't like it very much. It sounded really psychedelic, which wasn't really what they had in mind, but it was what Bob had in mind. I forget, what do you call it? Psychedelic bromo seltzer or something. So anyway, that record came out on Blue Thumb, which, like many things involved with Bob Krasnow, came and went. And Beefheart found himself kind of at loose ends, but his old buddy from school, Frank Zappa, had just signed a deal with Warner's for 2, not 1, 2 custom labels, boutique labels. So he signed up Don. He said, "You can do whatever you want, Don. I don't care. Express yourself freely." Now, this was a great thing because Don, by this point, was gobbling a lot of drugs, as were most of his band, most of whom were a little bit younger than him. And they set out to create, in semi-seclusion in their home, the Trout House, the legendary album Trout Mask Replica, which is completely inscrutable to those that don't understand it, and like a Rosetta Stone for those that do. This got him, it didn't really sell very well, and then he made another record right after that that sounded similarly chaotic and weird, except with an added marimba player, and minus guitar player. And by that point, Zappa's boutique labels were kind of wrapped up, and the artists that were on them seeded out to Warner Brothers, basically. Alice Cooper was on Straight, he went to Warner Brothers, and the Captain Beefheart was on Straight, and he went to Reprise, which was Warner Brothers' sister label, if you will. And they put out a record called The Spotlight Kid, which was done over an endless length of time. Nobody in the band has any fond memories of it. It's a pretty good record. It's a little bit, it doesn't have a lot of focus. Some of it's quite commercial. Some of it's quite Beefheart, and you can tell they're trying to appeal to something approaching a mass audience. Well, and I don't know the story. If you know it, tell me in the comments. If you know anything about these stories, I'd love to know them. Somebody somewhere at Warner Brothers said, "God, we got to get Beefheart selling. Like everybody, Richard Perry produced him, David Gates produced him. Bob Krasnow produced him. They all thought they could make a star out of this guy." And, Beefheart was a weird dude. He was basically a performance artist who made music sort of. At any rate, Warner's finally said, okay, enough of this buggering around. Don isn't allowed to produce himself anymore because the previous 2 records were self-produced after the Zappa one. Let's get a real producer. So they got a real, honest-to-God, rock and roll hit record producer. None other than the magical Ted Templeman. And so in 1972, Ted Templeman, who was getting going with the Doobie Brothers, Van Halen was in the future still a little bit. He had had hits with Harper's Bazaar. And he subsequently went on to be Little Feat. He had just done Little Feat's second album, I think, when he did this. So he was just getting started in his considerable career here. But the man was hit-struck. Everything, pretty much everything he touched after a while turned into a big hit. And he laid down the law on this record. He says, we're going to make a commercial record. And by gum, they made a really commercial record. It's still 100% Captain Beefheart. The songs are mostly about male-female relationships, man's relationship with the ecology, and things that don't make any sense, like Sun Zoom Spark. The band is in completely terrific form. By this point, they were a 5-piece. Rocket Morton, the bass player, was now playing rhythm guitar. Zoot Horn-Rollo, a.k.a. Bill Harkleroad, was playing the lead guitar. Plays a lot of nice mandolin on this record. Some gentle music on this. The odious Roy Estrada, look him up. As bad a man as I'll ever listen to the music of. He was the bass player on this, named Orijon, I think it's called. Art Tripp III on drums, who is peerless, in my opinion. And they do some weird stuff. They do the song Golden Birdies, it's pretty weird. Big Eyed Beans from Venus is kind of weird. But things like Low Yo-Yo stuff, really, you could play this at a party, everybody would dance. And it's a really good, I give this record an A. Maybe even an A+. I've got the fancy cover, it's clear, it says Clear Spot. So all you vinyl fetishists can be envious. I have it on CD, it sounds better. But I keep this just because I love this record so much. And with this record in the can, ready to conquer the world, it came out! And nothing happened. They couldn't give this record away. It's one of the great mysteries of our time. Why this record? Warner Brothers promoted it. It's not like they didn't try. They didn't let Don into the mixes, so the mixes are great. It just sank without a trace. And I would assume that was the point when Don decided, well, Warner Brothers isn't going to do anything for me. And he went looking for new opportunities. And he found one in the DiMartino brothers. A couple of guys that I think were from New York. And they got him a deal with Mercury. Now, Mercury is one of those labels, it's the kiss of death to be signed to Mercury. Graham Parker was on Mercury, and he hated them so much, he actually did a song called I've Got Mercury Poisoning, the best kept secret in the West. That's how much he hated his record label. And this record is curious because it's the same band, exactly the same band, but it's produced by Andy DiMartino. Actually, is there even a production credit here? It doesn't even say produced by anybody, does it? Arranged by Andy DiMartino. Yeah, I don't think there is actually a production credit on this record. Well, if it was my production, I wouldn't want my name on it. Oh no, produced by Andy DiMartino for, wait for it, Andy DiMartino Production Company Incorporated. All songs arranged by Andy DiMartino and Don Van Vliet. All songs composed by Don and Jan Van Vliet, his wife, and Andy DiMartino. Now, James Brown did this. He got his wife and all already. I'm not sure why they did this. I'm sure there was some skullduggery to get him more of an advance or anything. And they went into the studio and they did this record. Now, everybody in the Magic Band was excited to do this record because it meant finally we're going to make some money. And these poor guys, they'd starved to death. And they went in and they did this record, and they were all... It's tough to find a guy that played on this record that has much bad, terrible bad to say about it. But the fact remains that this record is an absolute turd. The mix is terrible. The songs are stupid. Upon the My Oh My, happy love song. I mean, this is no neon meat dream of a octafish on this album. You have lazy music and peaches. This record is so bad that even though it's still on the surface sort of as commercial as Clear Spot, it's got nothing that would appeal to a fan of Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band. None of the wordplay, none of the angular guitar playing. It's all softened up. It's shit. It's just pure shit. You'll note that I paid $2.50 for this. I won't buy it on CD unless I find it in the thrift store. If I find it in the thrift store, okay, I'll buy it. Until then, I'll stick with my barely worn, terrible Mercury copy, terrible pressing. What were they thinking? And because it was, of course, in those days, 2-album deal. Hey, okay, well, on the eve of a tour to promote this monstrosity, the entire Magic Band, which most people who are into Beefheart will tell you was the best Magic Band, quit en masse. Right before a tour, they told him to fuck himself. They caught him doing some skullduggery with the money, him and Mr. DiMartino. Look at that picture. Are you going to tell me there was no cocaine involved in this record? Come on. I've never been able to find any evidence of that. But if there was no cocaine involved in the making of this record, I will eat this hat, piece by piece. So what do? You've just put out a record that's alienated your entire old audience and hasn't acquired you any kind of new audience. And most everybody is just going, well, this is terrible. What the hell happened? So then you put out this. Blue Jeans and Moonbeams. Well, now he's got a new band. And the new band is elements of the guys that he hired on the last possible minute to go on his tour, who were, if I remember correctly, members of the band Hookfoot, a southern rock boogie band. And Michael Smotherman, I think, is on this album, and there's some very interesting music credits. Somebody named S. Hickerson and C. Blackwell write Captain's Holiday on this, which is an instrumental. Anyway, this record is, if it's at all possible, even worse than the other one. This is just no good at all. And like the party of special things to do, you could tell he's reaching down into that bag of tricks for something, but the next song is called The Same Old Blues, which is exactly what it is. And not only that, it's a J.J. Cale song. It's not even a Dawn song. And it's probably the best song in the album. Pompadour Swamp is not the same Pompadour Swamp that's floating around on bootlegs, which is a million times better. Twist of Luck. It's terrible. Anyway, both of these came out in England on, you'll note the delete hole in mine. So I don't think I paid more than $1 for this either. And it's not even worth that. These both came out in '74. And they both came out in England on Virgin, who wisely held on to the option on Beefheart. And when he came back several years later, they were able to put out a record in England that came out on Warner Brothers called Shiny Beast. And then after that, they just took him over exclusively for the world. And basically did what Zappa said and said, just do whatever you want, Don. Just give us a record, which he did. He gave us 3. And they were all pretty darn good. But that's another story. What were they thinking, though, when they got Captain Beefheart hung up with the DiMartino brothers? Whatever happened to the DiMartino brothers? Time to do some research. Thanks for listening. Subscribe and all that other stuff. We'll talk to you later.